The storm rolled in without warning, thick clouds sweeping across the Georgia sky like a heavy blanket suffocating the last rays of daylight. Rain came down in sheets, hammering the windshield of the sleek black Cadillac as it cruised down the I-75, its wipers laboring in vain to clear the torrent. Inside the car, Derrick Lewis leaned forward slightly, narrowing his eyes at the blurry lights ahead. The rhythmic beat of rain on the roof was oddly calming, a familiar percussion that had accompanied him through countless lonely drives and sleepless nights. But tonight, it had a different weight. He was tired. Not just from the board meetings, the flights, the shallow smiles from shareholders who still flinched ever so slightly when they shook his hand, but from a lifetime of proving himself in rooms that never expected him to belong. The gaslight blinked. He sighed. "There's a station up ahead," the navigation assistant said in its chipper tone. He nodded to no one, turned off at the exit, and rolled into the parking lot of a dusty roadside gas station. Its neon sign flickered, McConnell Fuel and Mart, and only one pump was under shelter. The store beside it looked like it hadn't seen renovation since the 90s. He pulled in, parked, and stepped out into the rain. No umbrella. Just the suit he hadn't had time to change out of, gray wool, tailored in New York, soaked in seconds. He ducked into the convenience store. A bell above the door jingled half-heartedly. Behind the counter sat a man in his 40s, pale-skinned, baseball cap low over his brow, chewing something slowly while scrolling on his phone. He didn't look up. Derrick cleared his throat. "Evening. Are the pumps working? I need a full tank." The man glanced up, his expression shifting subtly. A flicker of something. Dismissiveness? Disdain? It passed quickly, but not unseen. "You got cash?" the man asked. Derrick blinked. "I have a card." The man smirked. "Right. Listen, buddy, we don't do fronts here, and we don't take chances with types who roll in during a storm acting all slick. You can take your car somewhere else." There it was. The air in the room shifted, coiled tight like a wire ready to snap. Derrick took a slow breath, then another. "Excuse me," he said, voice low, controlled. "You heard me." The man stood now, squaring his shoulders. His name tag read Rick. "We reserve the right to refuse service, especially to strangers who don't fit the usual crowd." Derrick stared at him, letting the silence stretch. Rain pounded the roof like an angry choir. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. A few swipes, and he turned the screen to face Rick. It was the Phoenix Fuel dashboard. Location, Station 19B, McConnell Fuel and Mart. Owner, Derrick Lewis. Rick's smirk faded. "What?" "I bought this chain last week. 37 stations across the southeast. You work for me." Rick took a step back. "Wait a damn minute. You just refused to serve a paying customer based on appearance and assumption. That's not just bad business. That's a liability." Rick's mouth opened and closed. "I didn't mean—" "Look, man." "Don't call me man. You made your choice when you looked at me and saw nothing but a stereotype. So here's mine." Derrick tapped something on his phone. "Your employee access is revoked. You're terminated effective immediately. You have 10 minutes to gather your things." "You can't do this," Rick barked, his voice rising. "I've worked here 8 years. You think you can just walk in?" "And I didn't walk in. I own it." Rick's face flushed red with fury and humiliation. He grabbed his cap, shoved it into his jacket pocket, and stormed out without another word. Derrick stood alone in the quiet store. The hum of a fluorescent light above him buzzed softly. He looked around, noticing the broken tiles, the outdated inventory, the lack of care. The storm had cleared a bit when he stepped outside again. The air smelled of wet asphalt and old tobacco. He filled his tank in silence. As he pulled away, the neon sign flickered once more, and somewhere deep in his gut, Derrick Lewis felt something stir. Not anger, not triumph. A question. How many other places are like this one? And more urgently, what can I do about it?
The corner of Auburn Avenue and Boulevard was not the kind of place where dreams were built. It was where they were tested, brutally, constantly, where sirens were lullabies and cracked sidewalks told stories of lost futures. That's where Derrick Lewis grew up. The apartment was small, just 2 rooms and a kitchen with flickering lights and peeling wallpaper. His mother, Joyce, worked double shifts as a cleaner at the downtown courthouse, often coming home with aching feet and a smile that never quite reached her tired eyes. His father, Earl, had once been a union organizer, a loud and proud man with ideas too big for the world he lived in. But when Derrick was 9, Earl was arrested during a labor protest gone wrong, charged with assaulting a police officer. No one believed his side of the story, and in courtrooms like that, belief was a luxury not extended to men who looked like him. 12 years. That was the sentence. 12 years for a push, a scuffle, an accusation. 12 years of absence, of silence, of Derrick growing up in a world where fathers were myths. Yet Joyce never let bitterness become the language of their home. Instead, she turned survival into ritual. Every morning, get up at 5, pray, breakfast of oatmeal or toast, read 3 pages of something, anything. Words will get you out of here, she would say. Derrick listened. He read more than anyone else in his school. At first, it was comic books, then dictionaries, encyclopedias, court case summaries, investment articles he barely understood. His teachers noticed. By 15, he was in AP classes. By 17, he'd earned a scholarship to Emory. By 18, he was accepted to Harvard. But not without scars. There was that day at the private school debate competition when a white parent mistook him for a janitor. Or the time a professor at Harvard asked if he was in the wrong class. Or the countless boardrooms where suits shifted uncomfortably as he spoke, eloquent, controlled, unflinching, only to be questioned twice as hard. Even when he launched his first energy startup in Boston, his first investor asked, "Do you actually understand the market, or is this just a diversity play?" He understood more than they ever guessed. Derrick was not brilliant because he had to be. He was brilliant in spite of having to be. Every room he walked into, he carried the weight of expectations, those spoken and unspoken, the hope of his mother, the silence of his father, the ache of a community waiting for someone to make it. And so he built. By 35, he was the COO of Halley Resources. By 40, he'd founded Phoenix Fuel, an energy company focused on clean logistics, under-the-radar acquisitions, and a mission disguised under numbers. He didn't like press. He didn't do social media. He didn't need applause. He needed results. He bought that gas station chain not just for the numbers on the spreadsheet, but for what it represented. A last-mile battlefield where service, dignity, and equity collided daily in the open. Not in the courts, not in headlines, but in small transactions at the register, in tone, in eye contact, in who got helped first. And maybe that's why he hadn't told anyone he was going to visit one himself, dressed like any other executive passing through. Maybe deep down he'd needed to see for himself how bad it really was, if he was just imagining the rot. Rick Anderson had given him the answer. But instead of anger, Derrick felt something else growing, a plan. That night, alone in his apartment, 27 stories above downtown Atlanta, Derrick poured a glass of water and opened his laptop. He pulled up the internal audit on McConnell Fuel and Martin. The numbers were flat, declining customer satisfaction, poor employee retention. Then he clicked open a new document, title, Revamp Strategy, Station 19B Pilot. Bullet 1, Rebuild Culture from the ground up. Bullet 2, Hire local, train local. Bullet 3, Turn stigma into skill. He paused. Then he wrote, Bullet 4, No more owners hiding in towers. He closed the laptop. Outside, the storm had passed. But Derrick knew the real storm was just beginning.
The deal had been months in the making. No press releases, no ribbon cuttings, no boardroom selfies. Just dotted lines, tight clauses, and a trail of ownership that made it all look like a routine asset transfer. Exactly how Derrick wanted it. He wasn't interested in the kind of acquisitions that filled headlines. He wasn't building an empire for stockholders to cheer from balconies. He had no need to appear on CNBC talking about strategic growth in underserved markets. Because this wasn't about growth. It was about control. 3 months earlier, Derrick had been sitting in a minimalist conference room at Phoenix Fuel's corporate HQ. Polished concrete floors, a wall of glass looking out over the Atlanta skyline, and a single whiteboard with only one word written on it. Access. Across the table sat Lynn Tran, his VP of Data Operations. She'd been running analytics on underperforming fuel chains across the Southeast. Her presentation had been swift and precise. McConnell Fuel Systems, 37 locations, mostly rural South, outdated equipment, bad customer reviews, but, she clicked to the next slide, excellent geographic positioning near emerging logistics corridors. Derrick leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Give me labor data. She tapped a few keys. 86% of staff are part-time, low wages, high turnover, no diversity initiatives. Internal surveys show dissatisfaction with management at almost every level. And, another click, they've rejected 3 offers from Shell, 2 from Marathon. And why would they sell to us? Derrick asked. Lynn smiled. Because we're not them, and we're not loud. He nodded slowly. It was exactly what he wanted, a neglected, undervalued system, quietly bleeding. The kind of company that told a story just beneath the surface about how infrastructure mirrored the society that used it. Places like these weren't just filling stations. They were daily intersections of class, race, trust, and survival. They were the front lines. And if you controlled the front lines, you could shift the whole war. He dispatched Joshua Clark, Phoenix's low-profile mergers attorney, to begin the acquisition through Shell subsidiaries. No flags, no banners, just a purchase agreement wrapped in enough legal cotton to make it forgettable. It took 6 weeks. By the time the ink dried, Derrick owned McConnell Fuel Systems outright. Every pump, every light fixture, every tired manager still unaware that the man who now signed their paychecks was nothing like the men who had come before. That was how he preferred it. Because when you walked in as a stranger, people showed you who they really were. The board hadn't questioned it, at least not out loud. On paper, the purchase made sense. Acquiring McConnell gave Phoenix a stronger foothold in the southern corridor while boosting control of secondary logistics routes. The stations themselves, though outdated, sat near growing warehousing hubs and truck rest stops. But one board member, a crusty old financial named Matthew Heller, had pulled Derrick aside after the quarterly meeting. "Off the record," he said, brushing cigar ash off his lapel. "Why this chain? It's small, messy, broken, doesn't fit your usual pattern." Derrick gave him a practiced smile. "You ever played chess, Matt?" "I've played my whole life." "Then you know what happens when you underestimate the pawn in the wrong position." Matt blinked. Derrick walked away. He didn't tell the board that he planned to personally visit some of the locations. He didn't tell them he intended to show up alone, dressed in a tailored suit with a tired car and no entourage. He certainly didn't tell them he was planning to test the culture from within, unannounced, unseen, unprotected. It was the only way to understand the rot. And you couldn't clean rot from the top. You had to smell it, feel it, breathe it in.
That was why on a rainy night in rural Georgia, he'd ended up standing face-to-face with a manager named Rick Anderson, soaked through his clothes, underestimated, spoken down to, and finally reminded in the most jarring way why this acquisition had mattered. Because beneath the gas pumps, beneath the invoices and tank calibrations and quarterly reports, there was a system. And that system was broken, in places no spreadsheet could fix. He hadn't bought McConnell to grow revenue. He'd bought it to see how much change one man could inject into a forgotten part of America without asking permission. Back at HQ, Lynn had flagged an early report. One of the stations had received a sudden flood of online reviews after news spread about the gas station owner firing racist manager on the spot. "Do we respond?" she asked. He read through them. Some were praising the action. Others were, predictably, less kind. He sipped his coffee. "No, let the people talk." "Will it affect Phase 2? "Only if we let it." She hesitated. "You're really going to rebuild that one, Station 19B? He looked up. "I'm not going to rebuild it. I'm going to turn it into something they've never seen before."
Rick Anderson sat on the edge of his worn-out couch, staring at the floor like it had betrayed him. The rain had followed him home. It pelted the tin roof of his trailer with relentless rhythm, like 1,000 small reminders of everything that had gone wrong in just 1 hour. His uniform shirt was still damp, his name patch, Rick, barely holding on by the last stitches. He couldn't process it. Fired. By that man. That man! Rick put a long swig from the lukewarm beer on the coffee table, the same brand he'd drunk since he was old enough to ignore the warning labels. His hands trembled, not from fear. Rick didn't fear much, but there was something worse stirring. Shame and rage. He reached for the remote and turned on the TV, hoping for noise, distraction, anything. Instead, his phone buzzed. A text from his niece. "Uncle Rick, is this you?" Attached, Twitter screenshot. He opened it with a sigh. The image was blurry, probably from some security camera or customer's phone, but it was clearly him, standing behind the counter, shoulders squared in confrontation, and across from him, that tall man in the suit. The caption read, "Black CEO fires racist gas station manager on the spot. Absolute legend. Hashtag Derrick Lewis. Hashtag own the moment. Hashtag no tolerance." Rick stared at the screen, heat rushing into his face. Dozens of comments flooded in under the tweet. "Good. About time people like that got what's coming. Wonder how many others he's treated like garbage. New era, y'all. Clean house. Clap, clap, clap." Rick dropped the phone on the table like it was burning. "People like that?" he muttered. He stood up and paced the room, a habit he had when the walls got too close. His boots thudded heavy against the floorboards. The place smelled like beer, tobacco, and rust. The couch springs creaked under the weight of old memories and bad decisions. He hadn't always been like this, had he? Rick remembered being 17, rebuilding the engine of his uncle's Dodge in the front yard. He'd wanted to be a mechanic, maybe own his own shop one day. But life had other plans. His mother got sick, his dad bailed, and Rick had to drop out of trade school to take care of bills that never stopped coming. The gas station job was supposed to be temporary. That was 17 years ago. 17 years of mopping floors, counting cash, arguing with teenagers over change, and watching the world move forward without him. And somewhere along the way, he'd stopped caring. About people. About empathy. About who he became. Especially about customers who looked like him. He sat back down, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the rain. The next morning, Rick drove back to the station. He didn't know why. Maybe to demand his job back, maybe to make a scene, maybe to look that smug bastard in the face and tell him what he really thought. But the lot was already cordoned off. A crew of construction workers were unloading pallets of materials. The sign that once read McConnell Fuel and Mart had been taken down. In its place, a blank white panel waited to be replaced. Rick parked across the street and lit a cigarette. He watched as they stripped the siding off the building, removed the broken neon lights, and wheeled out the old refrigerators. A woman in a Phoenix fuel vest was directing workers and talking on a walkie-talkie. Rick rolled down the window. "You gotta be kidding me," he muttered. "He's actually doing it?" His phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from Polly, a friend from high school who hadn't spoken to them in years. "You're all over Facebook, bro. Just saw a Reddit post about you too. Dude's going viral. Good luck with that." There was no smiley face. Rick shut his eyes and leaned back against the seat. He felt something twist in his gut. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was something colder, more uncertain. What if this wasn't just a moment? What if this was the moment? The one that said loud and clear that the world was done making excuses for men like him. That night, he got a call from the regional HR office. "Mr. Anderson, we're officially terminating your employment effective immediately. You'll receive severance equivalent to 1 week's pay. Your benefits end Friday." He didn't argue. What was the point? Instead, he went to the fridge, opened another beer, and sat on the porch as thunder rumbled again in the distance. This wasn't just the end of a job. This was the end of the story he had been telling himself for years, that he was the victim, that he was stuck, that the world had left him behind, so he had every right to be bitter, small, and mean. But maybe he hadn't been left behind. Maybe he just stopped walking. He looked up at the clouds and whispered something he hadn't said since he was a kid. "I don't know what the hell I'm doing anymore." The wind answered. And for the first time in a long while, Rick didn't reach for another drink.
It began with a blueprint, not one drawn by architects or branded consultants, but by Derrick himself, handwritten on the back of an old ledger, while he sat alone in the hollow shell of what had once been Station 19B. The walls still smelled of fryer grease and engine fumes. The dust hadn't yet settled from the demolition crew's first sweep. Ceiling tiles dangled like loose teeth, and the fluorescent bulbs had finally given up their ghostly hum. Derrick stood in the middle of it all, rolled up sleeves, calloused hands from hauling his own demo equipment the week before. This wasn't symbolic, it was personal. Because this wasn't going to be just another shiny renovation with glossy signage and smiling employees who lasted 6 months before burning out. This was going to be a place that rebuilt people. And it had to start with the ones no one wanted to hire. He posted the job listing on a local community board and nowhere else. No recruiters, no corporate jargon. Just 4 sentences. Seeking young adults, no experience required. Will train. If you've been rejected, ignored, arrested, or underestimated, we want to talk. This is a second-chance training site for mechanical skills and fuel logistics. Room to grow, room to breathe. The responses came slowly at first. Most of them didn't believe it was real. Some showed up high, some showed up scared, some showed up angry, arms crossed and eyes narrowed as if bracing for a punch that never came. That's when he met Malik. 19, thin frame, worn hoodie. The kind of kid whose shoulders had learned to flinch before his mouth could open. He stood in the doorway of the former convenience store, looking like he was ready to bolt if anyone so much as raised their voice. "You the owner?" Derrick nodded. "That's right. You really hiring people like me?" Derrick didn't smile, just looked him in the eyes. "What's people like you, Malik?" Malik shifted. "You know, broke, record, no diploma, been caught up in dumb stuff." Derrick paused, then gestured to the busted cash register behind him. "You see that drawer? Used to be full of excuses. We cleared it out. Now we only take honesty and work ethic." Malik gave a crooked grin. "That's corny, man." "Yeah? But is it wrong?" The boy shook his head, shoulders dropping ever so slightly. "Guess not." And just like that, the first trainee joined the team. Over the next 3 weeks, more came. A girl named Tanya with a black eye and a GED, a quiet ex-con named Darren who could rewire a truck faster than a certified mechanic, a single father named Eli who'd lost 3 jobs in a year and hadn't smiled since his wife left. They showed up early, stayed late, argued, cracked jokes, smoked on breaks, and, slowly, began to believe they weren't just disposable labor. Derrick called them staff, not trainees. He gave them uniforms without name tags at first. He told them, "Until you choose your name, this place won't give you one." They were confused. Then he showed them the new sign being made for the building. Fuel Future. No titles, just growth. No logos, no slogans. Just an open door with no label. Because it wasn't about who they had been. It was about who they were willing to become. One afternoon, Malik lingered after hours, wiping down tools in the workshop bay. He watched Derrick calibrating a fuel gauge, then cleared his throat. "Why are you doing all this, man? Like, for real?" Derrick set the tool down and leaned on the workbench. "You ever been told you don't belong?" Malik scoffed. "Everywhere." Derrick nodded. "Yeah, me too. Still happens. But one day, I realized I don't need to belong to their world." He pointed to the garage door. "I can build my own." Malik was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What if I mess it up?" "You will," Derrick said without hesitation. "So will I. That's not what matters." "What matters then?" "That you come back the next day." By the end of the first month, the Chomsong looked nothing like before. The pumps were rebuilt, now fitted with real-time diagnostics for training. The convenience store had been gutted and turned into a clean classroom with tool racks on every wall. The back room was converted into a break area with couches, books, and music, because dignity wasn't just something you earned, it was something you deserved to work with. Still, the sign out front remained blank, because the name wasn't what made it matter. It was the people, walking in and out day after day, sweating through the process of becoming someone different. And Derrick? He didn't need them to see him as the boss. He just needed them to walk through the door. The boardroom at Phoenix Fuel headquarters was a cathedral of clean lines and quiet power. 12 chairs around a polished walnut table, frosted glass windows, a mounted screen glowing with performance metrics and shareholder projections. Derrick Lewis stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled down, suit perfectly pressed, tie immaculately knotted. Across from him sat 9 people, old money, sharp ties, and sharper tongues, bankers, lawyers, former politicians, institutional investors with quarterly demands and very little patience for anything that couldn't be quantified on a spreadsheet. At the center sat Matthew Heller, senior board member, longtime skeptic, and self-appointed guardian of business realism. "I think," Heller said, folding his hands with the practiced calm of a man about to land a punch, "we've indulged enough of your philanthropic leanings, Derrick, but this last move, this Fuel Future experiment, it doesn't align with our growth strategy." A murmur of agreement fluttered down the table. Derrick didn't blink. "It aligns with our risk strategy. This isn't just PR, it's insulation, community engagement, workforce development in vulnerable areas. That builds loyalty, customers, and employees. Workforce development is a university's job. Ours is profit. And yet we now own a gas station with no sign, a budget leak of $75,000 this quarter, and a team of trainees with criminal records." He let the words hang there like a trap. Derrick took a sip of water. Some of the most disciplined people I've met are those who've served time. You know why? Because they've already paid the highest cost to learn what not to do again. Spare us the redemption arc, another board member scoffed. We're not here to run a halfway house. Derrick set down the glass and folded his arms. He looked each of them in the eye, slowly. You all signed off on the McConnell acquisition. You gave me operational discretion. I used it, legally, strategically, transparently. Strategically? Heller said. You're creating social risk. One bad story, one incident at this training site. Someone relapses, someone fights, someone posts the wrong video, and this board goes down in flames. You think the market will care about your noble intent? No. The market will care about the outcome. And if we build a scalable model that reduces long-term turnover, creates loyal talent pipelines, and secures our position in regional infrastructure— Pipe dream? Someone muttered. Derrick raised his voice, not loud, but firm. Then we have done something no other energy company has dared. We've led. Not just followed data points, not just chased dividends, led. A tense pause. Then Heller leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head. You know, the only reason you're still sitting at that head of the table is because you've made us money every quarter for 5 years. Then trust me to keep doing it. He tilted his head. Trust you, or trust that this is still a business and not a crusade? The room fell into silence. Derrick walked to the screen, tapped it once. A graph appeared. Projected fuel corridor expansion across the South over the next 10 years. Logistic demand spikes. Infrastructure bottlenecks. Then, with another tap, he overlaid Phoenix's new station locations, including Fuel Future. The difference between us and our competitors isn't just that we're closer to the future, it's that we're building it. While they wait for approval, we're creating pipelines of fuel, of labor, of loyalty. He paused. But if this board wants to vote against that vision, feel free. He stepped back from the screen. I'll resign. Chairs shifted. Eyes widened. You're bluffing, Heller said. No, I'm just not chained to fear the way some of you are. No one spoke for several long seconds. Then a quiet voice, Amara Bell, the only woman of color on the board who'd stayed silent until now. I vote to support the pilot. One by one, the votes came in. 5-4, 4 against, 1 abstaining. The motion passed. Barely, but enough. After the meeting, as the others filed out, Amara caught up with Derrick at the elevator. You meant that about resigning, didn't you? He nodded. I didn't come here to get rich, Amara. I came here to build something that outlives me. She smiled faintly. Then you'd better watch your back. Men like you don't last long in rooms like that. He looked her in the eye. Then it's time to build new rooms. Malik hadn't planned to stay more than a week. He thought the job was fake at first, some corporate stunt to make a press release look good. He figured they'd hand him a broom, take a photo, and send him back to the same parking lot he used to sleep in. But then, no one handed him a broom, and no one asked him to leave. They asked him what he wanted to learn. The question shook him more than any insult he'd ever heard. He still woke up at 5:30 a.m. out of habit, even though he didn't need to clock in until 7. The mornings were quiet at the new Fuel Future site, just the hum of early trains in the distance and the occasional dog barking in someone's backyard. The classroom inside the former convenience store had become his second home. Steel racks of tools lined the walls, every wrench and socket labeled, sorted, clean. Derrick had set the standard from day one. Tools should reflect your state of mind. If they're a mess, so are you. Malik took it seriously, not because he wanted to impress anyone, but because for the first time in his life, something was depending on him. On Wednesdays,
Derrick taught the technical classes himself. He didn't dress like a CEO, didn't talk like a motivational speaker. He wore boots, oil-stained jeans, and a hoodie with the sleeves pushed up. He taught wiring systems like he was explaining poetry. He made hydraulics sound like jazz. And Malik, who'd always thought school was just something adults use to trap you, found himself asking questions. Good questions. Why does this tank compress here instead of at the valve? Wouldn't that sensor fail if the pressure rose past spec? Could you reverse engineer the whole fuel line using recycled parts? Derrick never laughed, never dismissed. He answered every question like it was valid, even when it wasn't perfect, especially when it wasn't perfect. That's when Malik started hearing his own voice and realizing it sounded smart. Lunch one day, Tanya, another trainee, said, "You ever think about teaching, Malik?" He nearly choked on his sandwich. "Me? Yeah, you explain stuff better than Derrick sometimes." Waved her off. "Nah, that's just 'cause I'm loud." "No," she said, "it's because you see people." Malik didn't answer, but that night he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what it meant to see someone, and why it had taken 19 years for anyone to really see him. The next week, Derrick handed him a clipboard before class. "Your turn," he said. "What?" "You're teaching fuel sensor calibration today." Malik froze. "Nah, I'm not ready for all that." "You're never ready," Derrick said, arms crossed. "You just step in." Malik stood there staring at the clipboard like it might catch fire. And then he stepped forward. The other trainees, Darren, Tanya, Eli, looked up at him, expecting something, waiting. He opened his mouth, and his voice shook, but he spoke anyway. "This here," he said, holding up a fuel sensor, "is the heart of the system. It don't look like much, but if it fails, everything else goes wrong. Like people, right?" They laughed and leaned in and listened. After class, Derrick clapped him on the back. "You did more than teach." "What'd I do?" "You proved something," Malik raised an eyebrow. "To them, and maybe to yourself." That weekend, a reporter showed up, a woman in her 30s with glasses and a soft voice. She asked Derrick for an interview, but he declined. "Talk to Malik." Malik's eyes widened. "Me? You're the voice here." She asked about his past, his record, his training. He told her everything, even the ugly parts. He didn't lie, didn't dress it up. And when the article went live, Second Chances at the Gas Pump, Fuel Future's Radical Rethink, his name was in the headline. Not Derrick's. His. The day after the article published, a man pulled up to the station in a Tesla. Clean suit, northern accent. "You Malik?" the man asked. "Yeah." "I read about you. Just wanted to see the place, and to say thanks. My son's been struggling. Your story gave me hope." Malik didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. And later that day, when he saw himself on someone's phone screen, his own photo in a story that wasn't about failure, he smiled for real. Because this time, he wasn't just the subject. He was the voice.
The pickup truck rolled into the Fuel Future lot just before sunset, its engine rattling like bones in a steel cage, its frame held together by rust and stubbornness. Malik was adjusting the air compressor by the new pump when he heard it. He turned, instinctively, and there he was, Rick Anderson. Same face, same posture, different eyes. Malik stiffened, the socket wrench pausing in his hand. He didn't say anything, neither did Rick. They just stared at each other for a long moment, two ghosts who'd once occupied the same broken building, now standing on opposite sides of what it had become. Rick stepped out of the truck slowly, cautiously. He looked around the lot, at the new signage, the spotless workshop, the trainees laughing by the bay, the absence of cigarette butts in the gravel. His jaw clenched. I almost didn't recognize the place, he said finally. Malik didn't smile. That's the idea. Rick looked down, then back up. Is Derrick here? Malik tilted his head. You planning to yell at him again? No. Rick's voice was quiet now. I'm not here for that. Derrick was in the back office when Malik knocked on the door. He looked up from a pile of reports, and Malik simply said, "He's here." Derrick stood. A minute later, the three men stood face to face under the harsh fluorescent lights of the old showroom, now repurposed into a teaching space with engine models, whiteboards, and rows of tools hanging in surgical order. Rick took off his cap. His hair had grayed since the last time they met. Or maybe it had always been that way, but Derrick hadn't noticed. I didn't come to cause trouble, Rick said. And I'm not here for sympathy either. Then why are you here? Derrick asked, arms crossed. Rick inhaled deeply. His eyes didn't waver. Because I messed up. Silence. And because I read the article, he added, glancing at Malik. The one with his name in it. I saw what this place turned into, and I guess I realized I was part of the rot you talked about. Malik shifted. His arms were crossed too, but the tightness in his shoulders had softened slightly. I've been out of work 5 months, Rick continued. No one will hire me, not with that headline stuck to my name. My daughter won't even speak to me. She says I embarrassed the family. She's not wrong. He looked Derrick squarely in the eye. So I'm asking for a chance, not a second one. A real one. You build this place to help people like him, he nodded toward Malik. Help someone like me too. Derrick studied him. This was the man who had refused to serve him, the man who had drawn lines in the sand based on skin and assumption, the man who had mocked and dismissed him without ever realizing who he was speaking to. But this was also a man now standing before him with empty hands and no pride left to protect him. Why should I trust you? Derrick asked. You shouldn't, Rick answered. Not yet. Trust is earned. I know that now. Another pause. Then Derrick turned to Malik. What do you think? Malik blinked. You're asking me? Yes. Malik looked at Rick, and for a moment, all he saw was the man who once called him a punk kid and told him to sweep the lot without looking him in the eye. But then he saw something else. He saw a man who looked like he'd been swept now. He exhaled. You said you wanted to learn, Malik said slowly. Then you start at the bottom. No title, no supervisor. You take orders from everyone here, including me. You lift, clean, fix, and you listen for as long as it takes. Rick nodded without hesitation. Yes, sir. Malik blinked. Did you just call me sir? A faint smirk touched Rick's face. I guess I did. Derrick stepped forward. One screw up, you're gone. No lectures, no warnings. Understood. Derrick reached out his hand. Rick hesitated, then took it. They shook. And just like that, the door didn't close. It cracked open. That evening, Malik sat in the workshop alone, polishing a torque wrench. Tanya walked in, wiping her hands on a rag. Is it true? He's really coming back? Yeah. You okay with that? Malik stared at the wrench. I don't know. Then he added, almost like a confession. But maybe it's not about me being okay with it. Maybe it's about proving this place is more than just a restart for the easy cases. Tanya sat beside him. You ever think about how wild that is? What? That we're the ones deciding who gets a second chance now. Malik smiled faintly. Yeah, that's the point. Right?
The call came on a Monday. Lynn Tran burst into Derrick's office, tablet in hand, her voice tinged with urgency. CNN wants to film a segment, national spotlight, human interest story. They're calling it The Gas Station That Could. Derrick blinked, his pen frozen mid-signature. Who leaked it? Not us, Lynn said. The journalist who did the local piece on Malik, her editor sold it upstream. It's moving fast. How fast? They'll be here Thursday. Derrick leaned back, sighing through his nose. Of course. By By Tuesday, the lot looked like a different planet. Phoenix PR sent decorators, media trainers, and 2 young interns who'd never been south of Baltimore. They rolled out crisp banners, touched up paint, planted shrubs near the sidewalk, and wiped every surface until it gleamed. It didn't feel like Fuel Future anymore. It felt like a stage. Malik watched all of it with growing unease. "They're even changing the tool labels," he muttered to Tanya, "making them TV-friendly, whatever that means." Tanya rolled her eyes. "Don't trip, just smile for the cameras, right?" But Malik didn't want to smile. He didn't trust the camera, because he knew it didn't care who you really were. It only cared about the story it had already decided to tell. Thursday came fast. A caravan of black vans and satellite trucks pulled into the lot. Out stepped producers in slim suits and sneakers, assistants with clipboards, and the anchor herself, Carla Reyes, a name Malik recognized from countless segments that made hard things sound palatable in 5-minute sound bites. She was sharp, charismatic, perfect teeth. Her handshake firm, her eyes always calculating. "We're thrilled to be here," she told Derrick, shaking his hand under a perfect golden sunrise. "This is such a refreshing story. Redemption, progress, unity." Derrick nodded, but something in his posture was distant, controlled. He'd been through this before. He knew how fast praise turned into performance. They filmed everything. B-roll of tools being wiped, trainees laughing on cue, Rick hauling a box, like he hadn't once refused to serve half the people now working beside him. Carla did interviews in a corner of the break room. Malik sat opposite her, under soft lights and a wireless mic clipped awkwardly to his collar. "Tell me about your first day here," she said, smiling with just the right amount of gravity. Malik shifted. "It was weird. I didn't think it was real. And now?" He glanced at the door, at Rick outside, sanding a pump casing, at Tanya showing a 12-year-old visitor how to check tire pressure. Now, everything was real. But he didn't know how to say that in soundbite form. "I don't know. Now it's not about me anymore. It's about building something that gives people a reason to wake up." She smiled brighter. "That's beautiful!" It wasn't what he meant. But she moved on. The segment aired 3 days later. The title flashed in dramatic font. "Fueling Redemption, One Man's Vision for a Broken System." It opened with a slow-motion drone shot of the station, glistening under the sunset, and a voiceover about second chances, blue-collar dreams, and one CEO's unexpected crusade. Derrick watched it in his apartment, alone, whiskey in hand. They barely mentioned the training. They cut out Malik's line about not being ready. They called Rick a man brave enough to return. They called Derrick a quiet visionary. He hated every second of it, because it was true. And yet, it wasn't. It was a version of truth made palatable to the same audience that never seen Malik before this, that would forget his name by tomorrow. He didn't want applause. He wanted change. But the world did notice. Applications tripled overnight. 3 governors tweeted about innovative rehabilitation. Investors started asking about scaling the model. And by Friday, Derrick had a dozen emails from Fortune 500 companies asking if they could franchise the Fuel Future brand. He closed his laptop and just sat in the dark. That night, Malik found him alone in the workshop. "Why you look like someone just ran over your dog?" Malik asked. Derrick didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because they told our story, but not our fight." Malik sat beside him. "Yeah," he said quietly, "but they listened. That's more than we've ever had." They sat in silence for a moment. The buzz of a street lamp outside, the distant rumble of a passing truck. Then Malik added, "Maybe it's not about what they say. Maybe it's what we do next." Derrick looked at him and smiled. Not for the cameras, just for the truth.
The accident wasn't major. Just a misaligned hose coupling that triggered a sensor alarm and sprayed a thin mist of diesel across the east lot. No fire, no explosion, but enough noise to draw every head around the station. Malik was the first to reach it. He sprinted across the gravel, heart hammering. The sound of pressure release hissed like a snake in the grass, and for a split second, just a blink of a moment, he wasn't in a training yard. He was back in the alley, 14 years old. Someone yelling, a canister dropped, police lights flaring behind him. His breath caught. Hands froze. Then he heard Rick's voice, low but steady behind him. "Malik, look at me. You with me?" Malik blinked. Rick was crouched beside him now, gloved, calm, already closing the valve. Malik sucked in a sharp breath, forced his hands to move. They sealed the pipe, checked the panel, locked down the pressure valve. It took all of 60 seconds, but inside Malik, it felt like 60 years. Later that afternoon, after the equipment was cleaned and the crew had gone back to their tasks, Malik sat alone in the garage, shaking slightly. Rick brought him a bottle of water and said nothing, just sat next to him. Finally, Malik broke the silence. "You ever freeze like that?" he asked. Rick didn't hesitate. "Twice. First time was in the Army. Second time was when I held my baby daughter and realized I didn't know how to love anything." Malik looked over, surprised. "You were in the military?" Rick nodded. 19 to 23. Got deployed, got sent home, got messed up. I don't talk about it much. Why? Rick shrugged. People like to call it service when you wear the uniform. But once you're back, it just becomes baggage. Employers don't want to hear about flashbacks. They want punctuality. Malik sipped the water slowly. My cousin died in lockup. 4 days in. Cops said it was a seizure, but he didn't have any history of that. Rick looked at him, said nothing. Malik went on. He was the smart one. Always told me to stay away from dumb fights, but he caught a bad charge, got left behind. Sounds familiar. Malik raised an eyebrow. I had a brother. OD'd 6 months after I got fired. Oh. Rick rubbed his palms together. I blamed Derrick at first. I blamed you too. Thought the world flipped upside down and left me behind. Malik snorted. World didn't flip. We just never saw it right side up. They both laughed, low and tired. The kind of laugh that knows pain doesn't go away, it just changes shape. Later that evening, Derrick walked into the garage. He paused when he saw the two of them sitting shoulder to shoulder, greasy, dusty, and oddly at peace. You two look like war buddies, Derrick said. Rick stood, wiping his hands. We're more like crash survivors. Derrick nodded once. Everyone here is. Then he looked at Malik. You good? Malik met his eyes. I'm getting there. Derrick looked between them, then at the valve they'd fixed together. You saved a lot of trouble today. Just doing the work, Rick said. No, doing the hard work. He turned to leave, but then added without turning around, tomorrow we're doing trauma drills, real ones. You two are leading. Rick blinked. We are? Yes. You've both earned that. He disappeared into the dusk. Malik and Rick looked at each other. Rick chuckled. Well, guess we better write something down. Malik smiled faintly. Nah, we'll just tell the truth.
There were days the compliments felt heavier than the mistakes ever did. They came in waves now, emails, tweets, articles, awards. Think pieces from thought leaders who had never been within 100 miles of Station 19B. Fuel Future, the redemption engine. From felons to foremen, the unlikely revolution. Derrick read the headlines with a numb kind of detachment. They made it sound like he'd done something finished, like it was already history. But they were still in the middle of it, still fighting, still scraping. And no one seemed interested in that part. The national attention came with new visitors. Congressional aides, documentary crews, 2 education officials from D.C. who kept using phrases like scalable pipeline and behavioral rehabilitation index without once looking anyone in the eye. Derrick watched them as they wandered the lot like tourists in a museum built from someone else's scars. Tanya muttered under her breath, "Feels like a zoo." Malik agreed, but out loud he said nothing. Because saying something, anything these days, could become a soundbite, a caption, another piece of the legend they were accidentally becoming. The cameras never stopped rolling. The world loved Fuel Future now, but the people living inside it were starting to choke on that love. One afternoon, Malik was cornered by a nonprofit delegation in matching polo shirts. They asked if he could say something inspirational for the kids back in Chicago. He blinked. Say what? Just a quick quote. Something about rising above, maybe mention your past. It helps them relate. My past? Yeah, where you came from? Malik stared at them. Then he said, I'm trying to leave where I came from. They didn't laugh. They just wrote it down, nodding solemnly like he'd just quoted Baldwin. That night, in the break room, Malik slammed his fist on the vending machine. Tanya looked up, startled. You good? No, I'm tired of being their fucking poster. He threw his gloves on the table. They don't care about us. They care about our story. They don't see me. They see the struggle I used to be in, like I'm supposed to stay broken just to make them feel good people for watching. Tanya sighed. You want a drink? Malik exhaled, nodding. Yeah. She grabbed 2 cans from the fridge and tossed him one. They sat in silence for a while. Then Tanya said, I got a scholarship offer. Malik's head snapped up. Wait, what? Mechanical engineering. Community college first. Full ride. They said the program wants diverse, non-traditional learners. She laughed bitterly. I think that means me. Malik smiled faintly. You gonna take it? I don't know. Part of me feels like if I leave, this place loses something. Malik stared into the distance. Maybe that's the point, though. What is? That we're not supposed to stay here forever. This ain't a stage, it's a launch pad. The next morning, Derrick found Rick sitting in the workshop alone. He was staring at the CNN article from 2 weeks ago. People keep sending me this, congratulating me. Like I deserve it. You do? No, I don't. I just got lucky enough to fail in front of someone who didn't throw me away. Derrick sat across from him. And what are you going to do with that luck? Rick met his eyes. I'm going to pass it on. Derrick smiled. Then you've already earned it. But praise kept coming, and with it came pressure. Every misstep now felt like scandal waiting to happen. Every offhand joke needed a disclaimer. Every social media post was dissected for meaning. Fuel Future, once a place to breathe, was becoming a brand, polished, curated, marketable. It was everything Derrick had sworn it would never be. One evening, after a community event where he'd been given yet another glass plaque with his name etched in gold, Derrick walked outside and found Malik sitting alone by the gas pump. You didn't want to stay for photos? Derrick asked. Malik shook his head. I didn't come here to be famous. Derrick sat beside him. Me neither. Malik looked over, honest and raw. How do we hold on to the truth when everyone wants the version that fits their narrative? Derrick stared at the horizon. The lights of the city blinked far away. We don't hold on to it. We live it, even when no one's watching. Malik nodded slowly. Then he stood. I think it's time we stop performing. And Derrick smiled. Then, let's build a place that doesn't need a stage.
It started with a mistake. A simple one. Someone forgot to secure the coolant valve on pump 4. The system overheated, Pressure climbed, and a small explosion popped the steel cap into the air like a bullet. No one was hurt. But the sound brought everyone running. Derrick arrived within minutes. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. The silence did the work for him. And Malik knew immediately it was his team's zone. He walked to the pump, inspected it, then looked over at Rico, the newest trainee, just 2 weeks in, barely 19. "You did a check on this yesterday, right?" Rico looked down. I thought I did. Maybe I missed something." Tanya stepped forward. "He's not trained for solo checks yet. That's on me." "No," Malik said, voice tight. "It's on me." He looked at Derrick. "I'll handle it." Derrick nodded once slowly and walked away. That night in the tool bay, everything cracked. Malik slammed the wrench into the tray harder than necessary. The sound echoed. Tanya flinched. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," Malik snapped. "We're falling apart. It was an accident." "There are no accidents anymore, not when people are watching us like hawks. One mistake and all this becomes a joke. You get that?" Tanya stood her ground. "It's not a joke, and yelling at people won't fix it." "I'm not yelling at people, I'm yelling at myself." He turned, voice rising. "You think I wanted this? Leading? I didn't ask for it. I'm just the guy who knew how to fix a damn sensor. And now I'm supposed to carry this place like it's mine?" "Then let someone help you." Malik stopped. His chest heaved. He hadn't realized how tightly he'd been holding everything in. Rico was sitting in the back corner, watching, small as a shadow. Rick had paused mid-wipe of a wrench. Everyone was silent. Because Malik had finally broken. Later, Rick found Derrick outside by the oil drums. "He's burning out," Rick said. "I know. You gonna step in?" "I already did, when I gave him this place." Rick shook his head. "He's not you. He doesn't have your armor." "No," Derrick agreed. "He has something better." "What?" Rick frowned. "A reason to feel it all." The next morning, Derrick gathered them all. No agenda, no tools, just bodies in a circle in the middle of the empty showroom floor. "This isn't a lecture. It's a check-in." Everyone looked wary. He pointed to the whiteboard. On it, one word: fracture. What's the cost of pretending everything is fine when it's not? Tanya raised her hand first. "You lose each other." "Good," Derrick said. "Keep going." Malik, arms folded, said, "You lose focus." Rick added, "You forget why you came." Then, Rico, quietly, "You start lying to stay safe." Derrick nodded. "This place doesn't run on gasoline. It runs on trust. Break that, and all we've built falls apart." He looked at Malik. "You're not failing. You're just carrying more than you need to." Malik's jaw worked. Then he said, "I don't know how to let go of it." "You don't let go. You share it." Silence. Then Tanya stepped forward. "I'll run drills next week." Rick followed. "I'll do the next 2 onboarding classes." Rico stood up, shaky but determined. "I'll redo my checklist, twice." Malik looked around at them all, and for the first time since the cameras came, he realized he wasn't alone. That night, Derrick found a note on his desk. It was handwritten, the letters sharp and a little messy. I thought being strong meant holding everything. But maybe it means letting people help you hold it. M. He folded the paper, tucked it into his wallet, and smiled. Because even at the breaking point, they didn't break apart.
No subtitle. No corporate font. Just 2 words, big enough to stand on their own. Malik looked up, eyes narrowed against the sun. "It looks real," he said. "It is real," Derrick replied. "Always was." Rick nodded slowly. "Funny how we needed a sign to believe it." Lynn snapped a single photo. No poses, no PR. Just people in work boots and sweat-stained shirts, standing shoulder to shoulder, under something they'd all built, without a blueprint, without a safety net, without permission. Just belief. Later that day, a man pulled into the lot in a dusty old Camry. He looked lost. Malik walked up to his window. "Need help?" The man looked at the sign, then back at Malik. "I read about you all. I just got out. Don't know where to start." Malik smiled, holding out a hand. "You just did." That night, as the sun dipped low and cast gold across the gravel, Derrick walked the perimeter of the lot one last time. He didn't think about profits or quarterly reports or the boardroom. He thought about scars and voices and people who stopped being labels long enough to become names. Then he looked up at the sign and whispered, almost to himself, "May every end bring someone here, and may every beginning start here."